You could potentially send the exploit in an email to an unsuspecting user. Basically, you'd write an email that looked quite similar to something that a person would send to the user and say something like, check out this cool game with the link to the server to download the malware zip file. Now, if the user then clicks on the link, downloads the malware zip file, that opens up a backdoor for you to be able to access that particular machine. In instances where the IP address is on the same network, that's fine. If the IP address is on the same network, you can listen to the NCAT utility on port 4444. However, this opens up some challenges when the IP address or the user is on a completely separate network. If it is on a separate network, there are some workarounds that we can use by firstly looking at the Apache server logs, and then I'll show you how we can use the Metasploit framework to access that particular IP address. So one of the first things I want to do is have a look at the Apache server logs. This server log will look different on your machine, again, depending on your configuration and what server you're using, etc. But for us, we're using an Apache server environment here. I can go into the server logs and let's look at how we do that by then accessing the server log and tracking the IP address. So let me go into the log file var log, and I type in AP. Let's just see what's Apache 2. Let's go have a look at the access log here, and let me look at this. You can see in this log there is an IP address called 192.168.56.103 that is trying to access this Apache server. And you can see this IP address a few times, which would indicate that the user has tried to access this file on the Apache server. So in this way, we are able to determine the IP address of the victim's machine and then use the NCAT utility with the port 4444 to then access this particular IP address. Now these logs will look different depending again on your server configuration. I want to show you another way of finding the IP address of the user or connecting to this specific IP address once we've looked at the server logs, and that is by using the Metasploit framework. So to do that, I type in MSF console, which gives us access to the Metasploit framework. Now, once I am within the Metasploit framework, I can then create an exploit and connect to this particular IP address. This takes 5 to 10 seconds to load up. Once it loads up, we'll be able to look at the different exploits that are available and then create a payload for us to be able to connect to that specific IP address. So let's use something called exploit, and what we want to use is the exploit multi-handler. So once we are in the MSF exploit handler, I can then look at the different exploits. We will be using a TCP bind option here. So let's look at the options. As you can see, there are no options selected at this particular point. We need to set that. So to do that, we can show options again and see there is nothing listed here. To then set the payload, we type in set payload, and we want to use Windows/shell and then _bind_TCP. That's the payload we will be using. We can look at all the payloads by just typing in set payload windows / and this shows us all the different payloads that are available. I'm not going through all the options right now. We simply want to use the shell bind TCP one, and let's go in and make sure that's working. Windows shell underscore bind underscore TCP. Now all I need to do is select options, and you will see here it has the process, it has the L port set at 4444. What it doesn't have is the R host. So we need to set the R host to the IP address that we found earlier. So we do that by typing in set R host and the IP address of the victim's machine that we found in the server log previously. So the L port again is the port that we're going to listen on, but the R host is the IP address, which at this particular point is not selected or not set. So set R host, and we then type in the IP address, which was 192.168.56.103. If I then look at the options now, it will show us the R host listed in the screen. So we know that this is the port and the IP address. Now all I need to do is type in exploit, and this will open a reverse shell to the particular IP address or victim's machine. So exploit and enter, and this will give us access, as you'll see here, Microsoft Windows XP. I can now see a directory called C tools snowcraft. I can then type in a directory listing. So let's do that by, sorry, that's not suitable here, dir. Let's go up a directory again. And as you can see here, these are all the files that are on the Windows machine. I can look up the IP config address and we will see 192.168.56.103. So we are on the Windows XP machine. And this is how we are able to then take control in a covert manner of a victim's machine. We found the IP address, we use the Metasploit framework to then type in the IP address and then open up a reverse shell to the victim's machine. If I type in exit here shortly, I'll be then going back to my Kali Linux environment, and then I'll show you how we can then simply come back into this particular environment. This is a covert way the user won't even know that we are accessing the machine. So let's exit now, and as you'll see, it's closed the connection. And if I have the MSF exploit again here, simply typing in exploit will open that connection again. As you can see, I'm in this tools snowcraft directory. CD double dot will get me one directory higher, and again will get me to the top root directory with all the files listed here. I can copy files, edit files, move files to the server, pretty much take control of the victim's machine, giving us complete access. So in this quick video, we've looked at how to find the IP address. We've looked at how to use the Metasploit exploit kit, and we've been able to create a very simple malware application to then take control of a victim's machine. Now, this is a very simple application. We'll be moving on into more complicated ways and a more undetectable type of malware in future lessons. And hopefully that has given you an insight into how to access a victim's machine.